this episode of BEA Conversations on mental fitness to leadership, we are speaking with Jessalynn Chen, Managing Director Singapore for Labbrand. Now, Labbrand is a brand innovation consultancy where they help brands to amplify the power of their brand, whether it's message or product. And they have offices in Singapore, Shanghai, Vancouver, Paris, and New York. Now, Jess reached out to us via LinkedIn because when she saw the preview to some of our BEA conversations on mental fitness, she said she wanted to be part of it, and I was like, yeah, let me message Jess, let's do the connection right now. And it's so wonderful because we happen to be neighbors as well. We didn't know that until we sort of like started our first Zoom call.
Yes.
But really today we wanted to have a conversation about the creative mind.
Yes.
Because we believe that creativity is hard to come by and is often affected by mental health.
Yes.
And hence we want to build fitness towards that. So Jess, how does the creative mind think?
First of all, thank you for having me, Elle. I'm very happy to be here and to share my view on this. I think when we talk about mind, we talk about neural activities. So it's a lot on the cognitive thinking. It's very spontaneous. You can be creative anytime. It's just whether you wake up that little engine of it or not. And a lot of times, people tend not to want to be creative. There's a fine difference between are you creative or are you not, or do you want or do you not? And simply because there's a lot of fear. There's also a lot of perception and conventional pressures around you because people think that you are not creative, something that you say it doesn't make sense. But who's to say an idea is a bad idea, because nothing is a bad idea. So that is how the mind works, and a lot of it actually then trickles down to our work in the creative industry, such as things like unconscious branding, things like neurological marketing. All of it is what happens in the mind up there. Because you make a lot of meaning. There's a lot of perceptive absorption to it. There's a lot going up there actually.
I love the way you put it. You know, you were saying that it's not just about whether you are creative or not. It's really more about whether you want to be creative at that point in time.
Yes.
And obviously at the moment everybody's mind is disrupted and so forth. So what really caused the blockage for creative people when it comes to thinking?
I'll raise a very close example to our situation right now. All of us are in this cloud of pandemic and constraints. Now, even when it comes to our work, when we are looking at things like trends and gathering insights from our projects, you realize that a before and after pandemic, the root and the outcome is quite different. So there's always a before and after. Now, if I zoom into the subset of designers, for example, in our company or everywhere, just had a conversation with my creative director the other day. A lot of them feel that because they're at home and some people are in the office, a team A, team B arrangement in Singapore, for example, 50% workforce, it's become very hard for them to bounce ideas off each other. There's a barrier, literally a physical barrier, and that's your screen in front of you. Because it doesn't bring out that human connection and interaction that we are having right now from our very first encounter via Zoom.
Yes.
Feels very, very different. Today I'm walking around your house, experiencing your little setup here, which is fantastic. And it's very, very different for designers who can't have that face-to-face interaction with their teammates, with their team leaders. They don't have the sounding board that they are struggling in their work. So what happens? Misaligned understanding in tasks. Sometimes they will feel that their creativity is stifled. They feel a fear of expressing themselves, and sometimes it translates into what they then develop and it shows in their work. I'm not saying for everyone, but it does happen to a handful of people. And even though you may have a lot of passion, and I think it's to have a creative mind, you also need to have a passion behind it so that you have a reason to believe. You need to be open, you need to be fearless, but sometimes circumstances like this cause you to be very stifled.
I'm always very compassionate towards the creative mind, only because I firmly believe that we tread on the balance of insecurity and confidence.
Yes.
And it's not an easy balance because if we on a particular day were to crave external approval, our confidence might be lowered just
Correct.
because of some of these comments.
Correct.
So how would you recommend that, from our Zoom conversation, you mentioned this statement and I thought, wow, I love it. We've got to enjoy what we do. How do we achieve that?
I think really having the belief and being passionate about what you do, just not be afraid, don't care about perception. Don't let that rule you because, for example, in this question, it reminds me of my daughter. And my daughter this week felt a little bit grouchy because it's Halloween and she was drawing a spooky pumpkin, the ones with the eyes and the funny looking teeth. And that was not what her classmates drew. And she was upset and she kept repeating the story a few times because her classmates laughed at her for drawing a spooky pumpkin. But you know what? That is creativity at work because she is making it relevant to the occasion, which is Halloween, and it's today. And her classmates were drawing it from the perspective of a normal pumpkin, something they probably see from the supermarkets, from the grocers, or from the internet. So again, they are just absorbing and taking on what they see and then kind of expressing it. So for her, that is creative mind at work. And another incident as well, she drew a flower vase last night, a small one. And she drew two handles that were not symmetrical. So one was big and one was small. And we asked her why. She said, because the vase is very small, you don't put a lot of flowers in there, so you need to be able to tip it over nicely, and therefore you have one handle that's bigger, one handle that's smaller to aid you in doing that.
Wow.
And that is user experience.
How old is she?
Coming 6, not yet, but coming 6. And that is a lot of the neural activity at work at that age without barriers, able to think big, dream big. Something that we find it slightly difficult in certain situations because of all the past experiences and knowledge and memories that we have kind of accumulated up here. So that kind of dictates how we think certain things, how we react, how we respond. But for them, young minds, fresh palate, they're just taking it on. They're like a sponge. So they think very differently.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think even in acting schools, children are quite open to act most roles. Whereas I think, in the adult world, when we go to work, sometimes we have to put on an act.
Yes, put on a front to be frank.
And we are crap at that. We can be crap at that when we are, not in the best of moods.
Yeah.
So coming back to the, what I want to understand from your point of view is obviously we are all on commercial pressures. The marketing dollars that is pre-COVID is no longer the marketing dollar going to be post-COVID, and the sense of engagement and the requirements for engagement is tuned up. So for a creative mind, how does one now fill the gap between design creative confidence and unrealistic expectations of someone who's paying us?
Let me say that it's a lot about convincing. It's a lot about communication. I think we need to be able to help other people understand what they really need. Because before this session, we talked about sometimes the other perspective is what you don't need, and it can then lead on to what you actually need. And I think that's a beautiful statement from you because a lot of times clients have that set budget or KPI they need to meet. So they say, okay, my boss says, I have X dollars for marketing budget this year, I need to spend it. I think these days in COVID, harder to find this money. But good old days, they had this and they say, I just want to spend it, so give me something, design something to it, create something out of it. And then when they get the end result, it may not be what they want because they haven't actually thought through it. So I believe in having that communication and the connection to really understand and dig deep into what they want and what they expect. It's helpful to bridge that gap, and particularly in the outcome. So we don't bump into situations where client says, this is not what I've expected, you're giving me the wrong thing, I'm not paying for this. And then that leads to a really bad relationship because that's the last thing you want to have. For a business.
And I think you're so right. I think often than not, we also have to sort of like empathize with our customers because they might be in a situation whereby they don't know what they want or what would work.
Yes.
You know, and
Yes.
perhaps one of the key function of key objective of engaging in consultancy like Labbrand, for example, is to get a fresh perspective and knowing, trying to understand what will work.
Yes.
So I think, like you said, the communication between where are we at with that understanding of needs and so forth, and really do we really want that change, or are we just verbalizing we want that change because we feel that from a digital marketing perspective, the engagement is not working.
Yes.
So I think
And may I add to that is just a few days ago we had a client presentation and we had a big audience, huge one actually, from the client side and from our side. And sometimes some people say too many cooks in the room may not be a good thing. But for us, it was great because there were one or two very quick thinkers because the company CEO threw a curveball at us and it was something that we had to deal with on spot. And some of the quick thinkers in our mind then reversed the situation with that communication in place to say, actually what you're talking is not too dissimilar to what we're saying. So how about take a step back and listen to us? And we turn things around. And towards the end of the meeting, we managed to make the CEO of the company believe in what we say. He actually accepted what we said, but then gave us another option to prepare another set of deliverables for him. And there's something that I need to give credit to my CEO of Labbrand Group, is that he forces all of us to be in a regular routine every day to have calls. Now the audience here is the directors of the company as well as all the key contributors to our business. And other than sharing new activities that you have in your plate, new leads and new opportunities, for him it's about helping each other with creative solutions to unstuck stuck issues that you're facing.
Yeah,
so
love
every
that.
time a question will come up, are you stuck?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can help you with? There's 20 of us, 20 over of us on this call. Can anyone contribute to help solve your challenge or your problem? And it's sometimes reflective in projects, sometimes reflective in how to even quote something and give the client what they need.
Yeah.
Back to the question we talked about earlier.
Yeah. And oh my God, we are so speaking the same language, because nowadays it's so important when we're working in teams to understand each other's energy levels.
Correct.
Because if we don't get sufficient rest, or we're worrying too much about certain things or whatever it is, we forget to take that into consideration, because the creative mind is one that is well rested.
Yes.
That's what I believe. And that if you are tired, you have to say something so that your team member know that, okay, perhaps usually you are a good thinker, but today you can take a back seat and be a perhaps supporter or just a contributor.
Cheerleader.
Yeah, a cheerleader, right? Instead of leading the charge.
Yes.
And let other people lead the charge
Yes.
for that particular day.
So that's what you said, a flip of energies.
Yeah, totally. I know that mental fitness is very important to you. Tell us why.
I like the way you coined fitness instead of health or state, because health or state has a negative connotation to some, or if not most people. Fitness brings a bit of a positive spin on it. One of my family members, my grandma, in fact, she has late stage dementia. So that already is, the mental state is down. Very tough looking after her, even though, again, in the family, they think otherwise. They think that she's fine as long as she can still carry on with her old age. But she's in her 90s, and therefore this dementia has helped me understand how important it is to keep this up here very active. And I learned a lot from my daughter coming back from school with a brand new perspective on things, something that she's heard from a teacher, she's encountered with her friends. For me, it's really interesting to be able to give this a bit of a rest. And I do get frustrated.
Yes.
I do let out my emotions, and I do feel uncomfortable, like I feel like having a heart attack or a headache coming on after a big burst. But this is all of it reacting to the neurological activity that you've just been through. So a lot of it then brings us back to the topic of how do we keep our mental state fit and healthy and sustainable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll all just crumble.
Yeah. I mean, it's so. I completely love what you said, because I think a leopard can't really change its sport. I think if we are relatively impatient, instead of trying so hard to be patient. Sometimes we can, right? As we mature, as we have different life experiences,
Yes.
it does bring that patience and focus after a while. However, in our natural state, if we're impatient, we are just impatient.
Sure.
I think a better way to look at it is, how bad do we want to burn a situation or relationship is how we should, and that should be the way to guide our response, I would say. So
Yes.
to keep that mental balance is a gear towards getting fitter, I think.
Yes, otherwise you will suffer the burnout in different aspects. It's not just physically, it's not just mentally, emotionally. It affects, as you say, it affects relationships,
Yeah.
it affects the way you communicate with people. And then I think the last thing people want is to lose that human connection, because it's becoming very important in
More and more
critical
important.
times like the pandemic. And that's why just a private little story is I hide in the bathroom or the washroom to think and to relax the mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good idea. Well, I'm very glad that you reached out. I'm very glad that we met.
Yes,
And I think
absolutely.
it's a start of a very good relationship. I could see already in a friendship with you, Jess.
Yes.
So thank you once again for your time.
Thank you too. Thank you.